The Alvis FWD was a milestone in automotive history. First built in 1928, it was the first series production car to feature front-wheel drive. To the tune of backfiring, we journey back in time to the early days of the automobile. Our test driver Christoph Bauer says that in the 1920s the automobile was still in its infancy. Engineers and manufacturers were experimenting like crazy, learning by doing. He says some of the results were hair-raising. For example, rocket-powered cars. In 1928, Fritz von Opel accelerated the Rack 2 to almost 230 kilometers an hour on Berlin's Aarhus Highway, which doubled as a racetrack. The Rack 2 used 24 solid-fuel rockets. In the same year, the street version of the front-wheel drive Alvis FWD debuted in England. Christoph says many people were as leery of front-wheel drive as they were of rocket cars, because front-wheel drive means the front wheels must do three things: steer, absorb shocks, and propel the car. Many people thought this was impossible. The first company to produce front-wheel drive cars in series was the Alvis, and that was this car, the Alvis Front. In 1926, the French company Tracta patented a system which made front-wheel drive vehicles somewhat easier to steer. The Alvis FWD has a 4-cylinder engine with capacity of 1.5 liters under the hood, and thanks to compression, it generates 75 horsepower. That helped it finish as the best car in its class at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1928. But Christoph says he can't imagine how anyone could drive this strenuous car for 24 hours. At the end of the 20s, Le Mans was owned by the Bentley boys. With their 4.5-liter engines, the British cars left their competition in the dust. But the Alvis won a clear victory in the under 1.5-liter class and 6th place overall. Back then, car racing was very hard work, as our test driver is learning firsthand. Driving the Alvis FWD demands absolute concentration, he says. The gas and brake pedals are switched around, and the gears aren't synchronized, so everything rattles and rumbles when shifting. Christoph takes a break in San Gimignano, in the heart of Tuscany. The Alvis clatters and rattles up the narrow alleys. The Alvis was conceived to be fast and maneuverable. Christoph can testify that it was fast due to its modern 4-cylinder engine with the camshaft at the top, and it came with an optional compressor, as this model has. But maneuverability was another thing, as drivers in Le Mans discovered. So the engineers supplemented the leaf springs on the independent suspension with an individually adjustable friction shock absorber, and that improved its ability to hug the road. As was usual at the time, the experience gleaned during racing was applied to the series production model. From 1928 to 1931, the Alvis FWD sold in Britain for £625 sterling. Its front-wheel drive and independent suspension made it one of the world's most modern cars. The elaborate dashboard in the cockpit reveals the car's racing pedigree, as does the roar of the compressor. With its 75 horsepower, the strongest 4-cylinder engine could rocket the Alvis to a top speed of 135 kilometers an hour. With the motor, differential, transmission, and steering all on the front axle, steering is a real challenge for Christoph. He jokes that after this drive, he can skip his next trip to the fitness studio. The driver operates the externally mounted brakes with his right arm. Christoph says turning the steering wheel too far can prove dangerous. The steering can get stuck, and then the car drives in circles, if nothing's in the way. Not something to try out. And even by the standards of the time, this was not a comfortable car. A jaunt with the Pioneer front-wheel drive can best be described as a loud and rough ride. Technically speaking, Christoph says the Alvis was far from mature. In the 20s, some experts thought that front-wheel drive would never be safe. That's probably why only 150 of these Alvises were ever built. That's how things are with Pioneers. Their brilliance is often only recognized many years later. The Alvis was the first series production car with front-wheel drive, making it a true milestone of automotive history.
In dem ein Frontantrieb verbaut wurde, insofern ist definitiv ein Meilenstein der Automobilgeschichte.
And so, it has earned a spot in the Zeithaus Car Museum in the city of Wolfsburg. It's hard to imagine a more authentic driving experience. Christoph rejoices, in spite of the exertion.